Mental Reps, The Hidden Power of Showing Up When You Don't Feel Like It, written by Ronnie Rowland. Published by Growth Literacy Lounge. There will come a morning when the alarm sounds and nothing inside you wants to move. Not because you're lazy, not because you don't care, but because everything feels heavier than it should. These are the days that test who you are, not by how loudly you respond, but by whether you respond at all. Most of life isn't lived in highlight reels. It's lived in quiet decisions made when no one's watching, in the in-between moments. The days when your motivation is gone, your energy is low, and your goals feel like someone else's dream. What you do in those moments determines the shape of your future. We've been told the secret to success is passion. But passion fades. We've been sold the myth that greatness is born from fire, but fire burns out. What remains when the spark disappears? What remains is the rep. The simple act of showing up, not to perform, but to practice, not to impress, but to prove, silently, that you are someone who endures. This book is about that rep, the one you do when it's hard. The one that doesn't feel like it matters, but secretly changes everything. Angela Duckworth, author of Grit, once said, "Enthusiasm is common, endurance is rare." That's the heartbeat of this book. Endurance. Not just in effort, but in identity. In the slow, steady burn of becoming someone who doesn't flinch when it's hard, who moves anyway. Inside these pages, you'll find no fluff, no hacks, no romanticized version of discipline. What you'll find is something quieter and stronger, the truth about how resilience is built, not in public victories, but in private decisions. You'll learn how to train the mind like a muscle, through tension, repetition, and resistance. This isn't about pretending to be tough. It's about becoming solid. And that happens not when you feel like it, but precisely when you don't. So if today feels heavy, you're in the right place. Take a breath. This journey isn't about doing more. It's about choosing to move, just once more. Let's begin. Chapter 1. The rep no one sees. Before dawn spills over the horizon, a lone runner hits the pavement. No fans, no finish line. Just cold air, tired lungs, and silence, and her legs ache. Her mind whispers, not today, but she runs anyway. That run won't win her a medal. No camera will capture it, but it counts. In fact, it might count more than any race she'll ever run, because this isn't a performance, it's a rep, a mental one. Most people only act when the lights are on and when the stakes are visible, when there's applause or affirmation waiting on the other side. But the truth is, the moments that shape you happen in the shadows, in the mornings you'd rather sleep, in the meetings where no one notices, in the decisions no one applauds. Mental reps are the invisible choices we make that stack into character. There's a lie that's been sold to every generation, that if it doesn't feel inspired, it isn't worth doing, that unless you're on fire, you're just wasting time. But that's not how strength is built. Not in the gym. Not in life. Not in the mind. Strength isn't sculpted by easy. It's carved by effort. Especially effort that costs something. When you push through the internal sludge of resistance, fatigue, doubt, boredom, fear, you're building something few ever talk about: self-integrity. You are practicing the discipline of being who you said you'd be, regardless of how you feel. That's not just effort. That's identity. Every time you show up when you don't want to, you're not just completing a task, you're casting a vote for the kind of person you believe you are. One rep at a time. You don't need massive wins to transform, you need consistency under quiet pressure. It's like laying bricks in a wall that will one day protect you. Each rep, small, unseen, forgettable, is part of the foundation. Skip one, and it might not matter. But skip 100, and the wall never stands. That's why mental reps are sacred. Because no one else is keeping score. Only you know if the rep got done, and that's where the power lives. People chase motivation like it's fuel, but real performers, those who last, who endure, who overcome, understand that action creates motivation, not the other way around. They don't wait for a feeling. They create one through doing. The moment your feet hit the ground, the chemistry changes. Your mind catches up to your movement. That's the alchemy of showing up. Even the smallest act becomes a training session when done under pressure. Writing a single sentence when the words won't come. Getting dressed when despair sits heavy on your chest. Offering kindness when your own soul feels hollow. These are reps. Mental ones. and they are powerful precisely because they are done without reward, without witness. The strongest identities aren't built on inspiration, they're built on repetition. The quiet, gritty kind that no one celebrates. If you want to be unshakable, start here. Do the rep no one sees, not for the results, not for the recognition, but because it's who you are becoming. Do it tired, do it uninspired, do it unsure, just do it. Because someday when the storm comes, and it always comes, you won't have to rise to the occasion, you'll default to your training. And you'll realize, all those hidden reps, they were never wasted. They were forging something stronger than motivation. They were forging you. The most powerful reps happen without applause. Consistent effort under resistance shapes identity. Action is the fire that fuels motivation, not the result of it. Where in your life are you waiting for motivation instead of choosing to move? Today, do one task you don't feel like doing, on purpose. Name it your mental rep. Do it to prove you can. Chapter 2. Motivation is a liar. Motivation is the sugar rush of personal growth. It feels good, but it crashes fast. You watch a video, hear a speech, read a quote, and you're fired up. For an hour. Maybe a day. Then the feeling fades, the resistance returns, and you're right back where you started, staring down the same task with no energy and no momentum. That's because motivation lies. It tells you it will meet you at the starting line, but it never shows up until you're already moving. Think of motivation like a shadow. It doesn't lead. It follows. You won't find it in bed, under the covers, waiting to escort you to the gym. You won't find it on the couch, nudging you to write that page or make that call. It shows up when you do, and not a second before. The world teaches a broken formula: feel good, then act. But the truth flips that on its head: act, and then you'll feel good. The emotional high comes after the discipline, not before. You don't feel proud because you wanted to do something. You feel proud because you did it, especially when you didn't want to. The mood follows the movement. This is why mental reps matter most when you're at your lowest. Anyone can act when they're inspired. That takes no strength, no grit, no commitment. But to act when you're drained, when the dopamine is gone, when the outcome feels miles away, that's where identity is shaped. That's where you build something real. That's when the reps count double. Waiting for motivation is like waiting for perfect weather before going outside. You'll waste half your life watching the sky. Those who build strong lives, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, don't ask the clouds for permission. They build under the storm. They show up in the wind. They move forward whether the sun's out or not. Because they know motivation isn't a signal to begin, it's a reward for continuing. Start small. Shrink the mountain. You don't need to conquer the whole task, just take the first step. Open the document. Tie the shoes. Fill one glass of water. That's all it takes to flip the switch. Once your body is in motion, the mind recalibrates. It stops resisting and starts responding, and slowly, motivation catches up. Mental reps aren't about grand gestures. They're about motion, imperfect, gritty, barely their motion. You're not building fireworks, you're laying bricks. And the brick you lay today, with no feeling and no fanfare, might be the one that holds the whole wall when things get hard. Show up. Lay it. Let the effort itself be enough. Every time you move without motivation, you rewire your brain. You stop outsourcing your energy to your emotions. You stop needing to feel like it to act. You become a person who acts anyway. That identity is bulletproof. That identity doesn't rise and fall with inspiration. That identity does the work because it's who they are, not because it's how they feel. So the next time you hear the voice that says not today, recognize it for what it is, a bluff. Call it. Act anyway. Prove it wrong. Do the thing you don't feel like doing. Not because it's easy, not because it feels good, but because it's true. Because that rep, done in silence, without passion, is the rep that counts most. Motivation is a liar, but discipline tells the truth. And when you act on truth, even in a whisper, you silence the lies, one quiet action at a time. Motivation follows action, it doesn't lead it. Waiting to feel ready is a trap that keeps you stuck. Each act of discipline chips away at internal resistance. What task are you postponing while waiting for motivation to show up? Choose one thing you've been putting off. Don't wait to feel like it. Set a timer for 5 minutes and begin. Chapter 3. The Identity Rep. Every action you take is a vote. Not for a political party, but for a person, specifically, the person you're becoming. You may not see the ballot, but you cast it daily. When you get out of bed when it's easier to stay down, that's a vote for discipline. When you hit the gym when you're exhausted, that's a vote for resilience. When you speak kindly in the middle of stress, that's a vote for integrity. No single vote defines you, but every vote counts. Over time, the majority wins. And that's how identity is built, rep by rep. Most people believe identity is fixed, that you're either someone who's disciplined or you're not, that you have grit or you don't. But identity isn't a label. It's a habit. And the most powerful habit you'll ever form is showing up for yourself when it's hard, because that's the moment identity shifts from something you talk about to something you live. The brain craves coherence. It wants your behavior and your self-image to match. So every time you act inconsistent with who you believe you are, it creates discomfort. But here's the trick, the reverse is also true. Every time you act as the person you want to be, even if you don't fully believe it yet, your brain starts rewriting the story. You go from, I'm trying to I am. Mental reps are identity reps. They aren't about crossing tasks off a list. They're about proving to yourself who you are. And the proof doesn't come from performance, it comes from persistence. You can fail and still win the rep if you showed up and fought. You can stumble through the workout, write a terrible page, or cry through a conversation and still log the rep. Because reps aren't about results. They're about resistance and what you do with it. This is why consistency matters more than intensity. A single Herculean effort doesn't change you. It's not the grand gesture that shapes identity, but the steady drip of ordinary choices made in defiance of comfort. 1,000 mental reps, quietly done, reshape the architecture of who you believe yourself to be. That's real transformation. And it never looks glamorous. People often say, I'm not that kind of person. But that's only true if you never cast a different vote. You don't need to overhaul your life. You just need to win today's rep. If you want to be the person who writes, write a sentence. If you want to be the person who trains, do 10 push-ups. If you want to be the person who shows kindness, find one hard moment to stay gentle. Then do it again tomorrow. You won't feel different right away. Identity change is subtle. It doesn't announce itself. It grows in the dark like roots before a tree breaks ground. But keep watering. Keep casting votes. And over time, the roots will hold you steady through storms. You'll wake up one day and realize, you no longer have to try to be that kind of person. You are. The biggest lie resistance tells is that today doesn't matter. That this one choice is small. That skipping this rep won't hurt, but every time you act against your own intention, you fracture the trust you have in yourself. And every time you follow through, you mend it. Self-trust isn't built with big promises. It's built with small ones kept. So don't wait until you feel like you've become the person you want to be. Do the rep anyway. That one small act is a quiet declaration, this is who I am now. Say it enough and you'll believe it. Do it enough and it becomes true. Identity is shaped by action, not belief. Every rep is a vote for who you are becoming. Consistency under resistance rewires self-image. What identity are your daily actions voting for? Pick one behavior aligned with who you want to be. Do it today, even if it's tiny. Count it as your vote. Chapter 4. Resistance is the signal. Every meaningful action has a gatekeeper. Its name is resistance. It shows up when the stakes are real, when the work matters, when the outcome could stretch you or scar you. It doesn't care about comfort. It doesn't attack trivial tasks. It only appears when you're about to touch something important, something that might change you. That's how you know you're close. Resistance isn't the reason to stop, it's the signal to begin. Most people treat resistance like a red light, a warning. A sign they're not ready or not enough, but that's a misread. Resistance isn't an enemy, it's an indicator. It flares up not because something is wrong, but because something is real. When you feel it in your gut, in your bones, in your excuses, that's when you know the rep is worth it. Artists feel it before they paint. Athletes feel it before they compete. Writers feel it every time they face the blank page. It's the whisper that says, "Who do you think you are?" It's the urge to clean the kitchen instead of start the project. It's the scroll, the snack. The sudden desire to do anything but the work, and buried beneath it is fear. Fear of failure, fear of success. Fear of exposure, fear that you'll give everything and still come up short. But fear is only powerful if you listen. The secret is to reverse the meaning. When resistance screams loudest, that's when the rep matters most. The stronger the pull to avoid, the greater the potential for growth. Resistance is gravity, it gives weight to the work. And if you train with it, not against it, you get stronger every time. The mistake is thinking you have to eliminate resistance to act. You don't. You just have to stop believing it. Resistance will ride shotgun your entire life, but it doesn't have to take the wheel. The goal isn't to be fearless, it's to move forward while afraid. That's where the rep lives, not in the absence of pressure, but in the decision to carry it. Your resistance points to your purpose. The work you avoid is often the work you're meant to do. The place you feel tension is the place transformation waits. So stop trying to silence it. Study it. Let it tell you where to dig. Let it point the way, not block the path. Like a compass calibrated by discomfort, it will guide you straight into the fire that forges you. Mental reps are born in these moments. The ones where your heart beats faster and your brain makes excuses. The ones where you'd rather numb out than press in. The ones that ask something real of you. Show up anyway. Do the rep with shaky hands. That's where growth hides. Not behind ease, but inside effort. You won't always win. Some days resistance will knock you flat, but the act of facing it is itself a rep. Courage is cumulative. It's built by exposure. The more you lean into resistance, the more its voice loses volume. And one day you'll find yourself doing the hard thing without negotiation, because it's become who you are. So when you feel resistance, don't run, don't rationalize, recognize it, then step toward it. Every time you do, you chip away at fear's power and strengthen your own. Resistance is not a wall, it's a doorway, and mental reps are the key that lets you walk through. Resistance signals that the task matters. Growth leaves where avoidance tries to take root. Facing resistance builds courage and identity. Where do you feel the most resistance in your life right now, and what might that reveal? Pick one task you've been avoiding. Take one action step toward it today, no matter how small. Chapter 5. Discipline over drama. There's a story we tell ourselves that greatness comes wrapped in chaos, that real artists suffer, that brilliance requires torment, and that if our process isn't dramatic, it isn't authentic. We've romanticized the meltdown, the all-nighter, the emotional spiral. But discipline isn't loud. It doesn't storm into the room or demand attention. It shows up quietly, early, again and again, and over time, it builds what drama never can: durability. The ones who go the distance aren't the ones who burn bright and vanish. They're the ones who build habits in the shadows. They don't need a crisis to create. They don't wait for adrenaline or inspiration. They've traded in the highs and lows for something stronger: rhythm. Not because they're robotic, but because they've realized emotions are a terrible foundation for consistency. We live in a culture addicted to novelty. Everything is designed to stimulate. Scroll, click, consume, react. And that same mindset bleeds into our work. If it doesn't feel new or thrilling, we assume we're off track. But the truth is, most of mastery is repetition. Boring, basic, deliberate repetition. That's the grind no one wants to post about. But that's where skill sharpens and identity solidifies. Mental reps don't care how you feel. They care whether you show up. They don't reward flair, they reward faithfulness. The kind of faithfulness that says, I don't need this to feel good to do it. That mindset is armor. It protects you when life's pace quickens and your energy drops. It gives you a base, a code, a steady place to return when motivation leaves and pressure rises. There's nothing wrong with emotion. It has its place. But emotion can't be the driver, because when the hard days come, and they will, emotion disappears. It won't wake you up early. It won't rewrite the page you deleted. It won't carry you through failure. But discipline will. Discipline is the scaffolding that holds you up while the storm blows through. It's not sexy, but it's solid. Look at anyone who's built something meaningful, a business, a body of work, and underneath the success, you'll find structure, daily actions, fixed habits, systems, not scattered energy, but focused repetition. They aren't driven by how they feel on any given day. They're driven by the promise they made to themselves, and the reps they refuse to skip. Mental reps are about honoring that promise. Not because you're chasing perfection, but because you're crafting permanence. Every time you choose discipline over drama, you reinforce that you don't need to be swept away by chaos. You can be steady. You can be grounded. You can be the same person on a Monday as you are on a Friday. That steadiness is rare, and it's powerful. The world might not notice the work you do on the quiet days, the pages you write when inspiration is absent, the workouts you grind through in silence, the conversations you initiate even when you're tired, but those are the moments that matter. They build a reputation, not with others, but with yourself. And that self-trust becomes the launchpad for everything else. If you want to go further, trade the roller coaster for the railroad, trade the drama for discipline. Let others wait for lightning. You're showing up with a lantern. And that light, small but steady, will guide you longer than any spark ever could. Discipline builds what drama can't, reliability and resilience. Mastery is repetition, not inspiration. Emotions may fluctuate, but structure holds. Where are you waiting for emotional energy, instead of building reliable structure? Create one daily habit you commit to doing no matter your mood. Do it today. Repeat tomorrow. Chapter 6. The 5-Minute War. The hardest part isn't the task itself. It's the 5 minutes before. That's when your brain spins excuses, inflates obstacles, and sharpens every reason not to begin. That's the war zone, the internal fog, the endless negotiation. I'll do it after this one thing. Maybe tomorrow I'll feel better. It's not the right time. In those 5 minutes, the resistance feels massive. But once you start, once you take the first step, the mountain shrinks. The mind is a master illusionist. It takes a 10-minute task and coats it in dread. It amplifies discomfort before a single action has been taken. That's because the brain hates uncertainty. It prefers familiar pain over unknown effort. So it floods you with inertia, not because the task is impossible, but because starting feels risky. But action cuts through that fog. Even a small move disarms the mental spiral. This is where mental reps earn their name. You don't win them in the hour-long workout, the big presentation, or the polished performance. You win them in the 5 minutes of friction beforehand, when every part of you is trying to delay. If you can win those minutes, the rest takes care of itself. Starting is the hardest rep, and it's the one that matters most. Your brain doesn't need to be convinced. It needs to be bypassed. Stop arguing with it. Don't wait to feel brave or certain. Don't negotiate with your excuses. Instead, create a system so small, so simple, that it sneaks under the radar. Set a timer for 5 minutes. Commit to just starting. 1 push-up. 1 sentence. 1 drawer cleaned. If you do more, great. If not, you've still won the rep. You've moved. And that movement breaks the mental grip of delay. Momentum doesn't begin with motivation. It begins with motion. Just enough to shift the chemistry of your mind. When you start, your brain releases dopamine, not as a reward but as a response to engagement. You begin to feel better not because the work is done, but because the work has begun. You flip the switch. And that alone changes everything. The beauty of the 5-minute war is that it's winnable. You don't need heroic energy. You just need a moment of clarity and a willingness to act. Once the motion starts, the path unfolds. What felt like a mountain becomes a molehill, not because the task changed, but because you did. You stopped waiting and started moving. Think of every resistance-packed moment as a gate. The longer you stand outside it, the more imposing it feels. But the moment you step through, you realize the bars were only smoke. The gate wasn't locked. You just had to walk forward. That's the secret most people never discover. The fear of starting is louder than the reality of doing, and the only way through is action. Mental reps don't require you to be ready. They require you to begin. The 5-minute war will greet you often, in the morning, at the gym, before difficult conversations, every time you sit to create. You don't have to conquer it once and for all. You just have to beat it today. One battle, one win. So the next time it shows up, don't flinch, don't wait. Start the timer. Begin the rep. Not because you feel like it, but because you can. You're not fighting the whole war. You're just taking the hill in front of you. 5 minutes. That's all it takes to shift the day, and maybe the direction of your life. The hardest resistance happens right before starting. Motion breaks mental inertia faster than motivation ever could. 5 minutes of action can rewire your momentum. What task in your life feels heavy, yet might shift if you gave it just 5 focused minutes? Pick one thing you've been delaying, set a 5-minute timer. Start immediately, don't stop to think, just move. Chapter 7. When you show up empty. There will be days when you feel hollow. When energy is gone, clarity is clouded, and nothing you do seems to matter. These aren't dramatic breakdowns or crisis moments. They're the quiet weight of existing on empty. And on those days, the temptation is strong to retreat, to wait until you're full again. But that's a trap, because those are the days when showing up means the most. Anyone can act when they're overflowing, but to act when you're depleted, that's the rep that shapes something deeper. When you lift with an empty tank, you're not building results, you're building resolve. Mental reps done from emptiness don't look impressive, but they mean everything. They're a declaration. I may not feel powerful, but I am still in control. The world rewards outcomes. But character is built in effort, especially when that effort costs something invisible. On the days you show up without inspiration, without recognition, without any return, you're training integrity. You're proving that your actions aren't dependent on your emotions. You're reinforcing that doing the right thing isn't just what you do, it's who you are. There's something sacred about showing up empty. It strips away performance. It removes ego. It demands a purer kind of presence. When you have nothing to give and you still give something, that's not just effort, that's courage, that's honesty. That's mental endurance at its rawest. And those reps don't just count, they count more. The danger is believing that low-energy actions are wasted. That if your words don't flow, or your workout is weak, or your attention is fractured, then the day is lost. But that's not true. What you're doing on those days is reinforcing a critical truth. I can be tired and still trustworthy. I can be scattered and still show up. I can be empty and still be enough to try. You won't always be at your best, no one is. But the decision to act anyway, to bring whatever you have, even if it's not much, keeps the streak alive. It honors the identity you're building. It reminds your brain that discipline isn't about force. It's about alignment. About choosing to live by what you've decided, not by what you feel. Sometimes the most powerful rep is a small one, writing one line instead of none, walking around the block instead of skipping the day, saying something kind when silence would be easier. These aren't productivity wins. They're integrity wins. They reinforce a foundation that can't be shaken. Because it wasn't built on feeling, it was built on follow-through. When you show up empty, you're not faking it. You're choosing it. You're choosing to value the act over the atmosphere. You're choosing to keep a promise to yourself, even when no one else would blame you for breaking it. That's how confidence is built, not from loud success, but from quiet consistency. You don't need to push hard on these days. You just need to push at all. That tiny act is a hinge. It keeps the door from closing. And when tomorrow comes, you'll find yourself just a bit stronger. Not because your energy returned, but because your identity held. So when the next empty day arrives, and it will, don't wait to feel full. Don't wait for the fog to lift. Do the rep anyway. Bring your fatigue. Bring your doubt. Bring your nothing. And give it something. That's not weakness. That's discipline in its purest form. Showing up empty builds integrity, not just output. Low energy reps are still wins if they're consistent. Discipline means acting from decision, not from mood. What does it look like for you to show up on a day when you feel empty? Do one small task today, even if you feel you have nothing to give. Prove to yourself that effort counts. Chapter 8. Reps in the dark. Growth rarely announces itself. It doesn't ring bells or flash signs. Most of the time it happens in silence, beneath the surface, beyond visibility, without applause. These are the reps in the dark. The mornings where nothing clicks. The workouts that feel like going backward. The conversations that leave you wondering if anything landed. But make no mistake, those reps still count. They might count more than the visible ones. We've been trained to crave progress we can measure. Miles logged, pages written, weight lost. Metrics offer comfort. They tell us the effort is paying off. But growth isn't always linear. It often lags behind effort. You do the work long before you see the result. And if you quit in the silence, if you stop because the progress hasn't shown up, you never get to meet who you were becoming. Think of bamboo. For years, it barely breaks ground. It grows roots. It strengthens its base. Nothing seems to happen. Then, in a short burst, it shoots upward at an astonishing rate. But the height was never the real miracle. It was the patience. The hidden labor. The commitment to rooting deep before reaching high. Your mental reps are no different. The dark doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're forming. Identity doesn't announce itself during breakthroughs. It takes shape in the shadows of repetition. You're not just building habits, you're becoming someone who doesn't need the spotlight to show up. Someone who can persist without praise. Someone who trusts that the work is working, even when it doesn't look like it. Most people give up not because they lacked ability, but because they lacked evidence. They needed feedback to stay faithful, but feedback isn't always immediate. Sometimes the mind needs time to catch up to the effort. Sometimes you're laying down pathways that won't pay off until later, and that's okay. Not everything valuable is visible right away. Mental reps train something beyond skill, they train belief. They teach you to keep showing up when logic says it's pointless. They forge the ability to act on principle, not just on proof. They stretch your trust in the process. That trust becomes a quiet kind of power, an internal fire that doesn't flicker every time the results take too long. The danger in the dark is detachment. When you don't see change, you stop believing your actions matter. You drift, you skip, you disengage, but discipline says, keep going. Not because the progress is obvious, but because the commitment is real. The root is deepening. The foundation is forming. And the moment you stop is often the moment just before the shift. Don't underestimate the power of momentum without visibility. Every unseen rep builds mass beneath the surface. Every unnoticed effort adds to the weight your character can carry. You may not see the structure yet, but it's being built, quietly, relentlessly, faithfully, and when the breakthrough comes, and it will not be luck. It will be the result of 100 invisible days. So the next time you feel stuck, when your efforts seem to echo into nothing, remember this: silence doesn't mean stillness. And darkness doesn't mean death. It means growth, hidden, patient, relentless. Keep showing up. Keep laying bricks. You don't need the light to build something unshakable. The most important growth often happens unseen. Consistent effort, without visible reward, builds trust and identity. Momentum is forged long before results appear. Where are you putting in work that feels invisible, and how can you reframe it as foundational? Choose one habit or discipline you've stopped because you didn't see results. Restart it today. Let the dark grow your roots. Chapter 9. Identity is a muscle. Identity isn't fixed. It's trained, not once but daily. Just like muscle, it grows through tension. It breaks down in discomfort and rebuilds stronger on the other side. You don't become confident, disciplined, or resilient through thinking. You become those things through repeated strain, through reps. Identity is sculpted the same way a body is, under pressure, over time. Everyone wants to feel solid in who they are, but that solidity doesn't come from imagining your best self. It comes from acting like them when it's hardest. Every time you keep a promise to yourself in discomfort, you're reinforcing your structure. That's how confidence becomes real, not by telling yourself you're strong, but by proving it through the act of persistence. There's pain in growth. Always. Not the kind that signals harm, but the kind that signals change. Ask any athlete. Soreness isn't failure, it's feedback. It means something new is being demanded. Identity responds the same way. When you choose discipline over comfort, honesty over ease, consistency over chaos, you feel the stretch. It hurts a little, but it also expands you. Most people misunderstand identity as something they find, but identity isn't discovered. It's built. It's carved out of effort and honesty and pressure. It's who you become when you choose what's hard because it's right, and the more you choose it, the more familiar it becomes. The rep stops feeling foreign. The pain turns into power. What once felt like resistance becomes rhythm. Mental reps are identity workouts. They're the daily rituals that say, "This is who I am, even when I don't feel like it." That statement, repeated through action, becomes internalized. And once it's part of you, It doesn't need constant affirmation. It moves from behavior to belief, from struggle to second nature. But just like muscle, identity can atrophy. Skip too many reps, and your self-trust starts to weaken, not instantly, but slowly. You begin to doubt. You begin to negotiate. And eventually you stop recognizing yourself in your choices. The drift is subtle. The repair is deliberate. It starts with one rep, the rep that says, I'm back. Rebuilding identity isn't dramatic. It's not about overhauling your life overnight. It's about reclaiming the small acts that align with your core, waking up on time, finishing what you start, speaking truthfully, practicing patience. Each act may seem small, but together they build a mental physique that doesn't shake in the storm. It stands, not perfectly, but steadily. No one sees the internal reps. They only see the outcome, how you carry yourself, how you speak, how you recover from setbacks. But underneath that is the grind, the unglamorous reps done in silence, the hard decisions that leave no highlight reel. That's where identity gets built. Quiet, repetitive, intentional. You don't need to wait until you feel like the kind of person who can handle more. Start by handling what's in front of you today. Lift the weight of one honest choice. Hold it. Repeat tomorrow. Your identity doesn't need a transformation. It needs tension. And it needs your willingness to face it again and again. So the next time you doubt who you are, don't argue. Don't spiral. Do a rep. Something small but aligned. Something consistent with the person you want to be. Then do it again. That's how you train belief. That's how you build strength. That's how identity becomes unshakable, not through words, but through the weight you carry on purpose. Identity is built through consistent choices under tension, reps done in discomfort shape who you become. Self-trust grows like muscle, by being tested and trained. Where in your life is identity asking to be strengthened? And what rep can you do to train it? Choose one hard choice today that aligns with the person you want to become. Do it. Count it as your rep. Chapter 10. The compound effect of tiny wins. The biggest changes rarely come from big moves. They come from small ones stacked. The choice to wake up 5 minutes earlier, the decision to finish what you started, the pause before snapping in anger. On their own, they seem minor, too light to matter. But repeated over time, they become something massive. Like drops filling a reservoir, tiny wins compound, quietly, powerfully, irreversibly. The mind loves to overvalue intensity. We want transformation to feel like fireworks, loud, immediate, impressive. So we go hard on Monday, burn out by Wednesday, and start over the next week. But real transformation isn't loud. It's steady. It's the slow build of self-trust through repeated, almost invisible action. You don't see the change until it's everywhere. Tiny wins carry a secret power. They bypass overwhelm. When the mountain feels too big to climb, you take one step, just one. That step breaks inertia, and once you're in motion, the next one is easier. That's how you win the mental battle, not by scaling cliffs in one leap, but by walking faithfully daily, even when the path looks endless. Mental reps thrive in the small. They live in the 2-minute task you don't skip, in the journal entry no one reads, in the quiet choice to say no when it would be easier to say yes. They accumulate. They multiply. And eventually they compound into something that can't be ignored: momentum. Momentum doesn't come from breakthroughs. It comes from patterns, the kind of patterns that are boring on the surface but bulletproof underneath. The kind that say, I do this because it's who I am. You don't need to feel on fire to keep going. You just need to not break the chain. Do the rep. Keep the promise. Let the small act win the day. Most people underestimate the cost of skipping just one day. But identity isn't fragile, it's responsive. Skip one rep, and nothing breaks. But skip 10, and the cracks start to form. Not in your schedule, but in your belief. You stop seeing yourself as consistent. That shift in self-perception matters more than any missed task, because once you see yourself as inconsistent, you start acting like it. This is why tiny wins matter. Not just for what they accomplish, but for what they preserve: your streak. That streak isn't just momentum, it's evidence. Evidence that you show up. That you follow through. That you honor your own effort. And that evidence becomes armor against the voice that says you never stick with anything. It's not about doing more. It's about doing less better. Let go of the need to overhaul your life in a weekend. Let go of the fantasy of being a new person tomorrow. Become that person by doing today's rep. Just today's. Then do it again. Stack enough days like that, and the compound effect takes over. What once felt small becomes unstoppable. The beauty of the compound effect is that it works both ways. Neglect compounds too. Every missed opportunity to show up, every time you postpone the rep, feeds the opposite identity. That's why awareness matters. That's why a tiny win isn't just a moment, it's a direction, one you choose with every decision. So stop looking for a breakthrough. Look for a brick. Lay it. Then lay another. That's how mental strength is built, not by flashes of greatness, but by steady pressure over time. The rep today doesn't need to be impressive, it just needs to be done. Again, and again, and again. Tiny wins compound into unshakable momentum. Repetition creates identity far more than intensity. Breaking the chain erodes belief. Keeping it builds trust. What small, consistent win are you underestimating, and how can you double down on it? Pick one tiny rep you can do daily for the next 7 days. Start today. Protect the streak at all costs. Chapter 11. Becoming unshakable. Strength isn't proven in calm waters. It's revealed in the storm. It's easy to feel grounded when life is smooth, when plans unfold, and people behave. But real resilience shows up when everything goes sideways. When the schedule breaks, the news hits, the chaos floods in, and you don't. You stay steady. Not because you're unbothered, but because you're trained, because you've done the reps. Emotional resilience isn't a trait you're born with. It's a muscle built through practice, not dramatic practice. Quiet practice. Choosing calm when panic is easier. Responding instead of reacting. Breathing before speaking, showing restraint when your instincts scream otherwise. These are mental reps, and they forge something far deeper than composure. They forge character. You can't fake strength under pressure. The real you surfaces when tension rises. The version that speaks without scripting, acts without rehearsal, chooses without applause. That's where training matters. You don't rise to the occasion. You fall to the level of your preparation. If you haven't built your base, you crumble. But if you've trained through the small storms, you can stand in the big ones. Mental reps aren't just about action, they're about emotional control. Every time you choose not to escalate, not to spiral, not to give in to the impulse to lash out or shut down, you're strengthening your emotional endurance. You're learning that feelings are not commands, they're signals. And not every signal needs a reaction. Most people think emotional strength looks like stoicism, stone-faced silence. But real strength is dynamic. It listens, adapts, and acts from clarity, not chaos. It doesn't suppress emotion. It directs it, channeling the charge into thoughtful movement instead of automatic reactivity. That's the power of training. When you've practiced staying centered, even your anger becomes measured. When you show up on days you feel scattered, you're practicing more than task completion. You're wiring your nervous system to tolerate friction without flinching. You're proving to yourself that discomfort doesn't define your behavior. And over time, that inner steadiness begins to shape your outer world. People sense it. They lean on it. You become the calm in the room. But steadiness isn't about being numb. It's about being anchored. Anchors hold because they're grounded in something deeper than conditions. That depth comes from the repetitions no one saw. The quiet mornings when you chose silence instead of noise. The hard conversations where you spoke truth without cruelty. The failures you faced without self-pity. Every one of those moments was weight added to your foundation. And when life tests that foundation, when everything feels shaky, your footing holds. Not because the world cooperated, but because you prepared. You trained for this. You didn't wait for the storm to find your center, you built it in advance. That's what mental reps are for. Not to look strong, but to be strong. When it counts. You won't always feel unshakable. You're human, but strength isn't about how you feel. It's about what you choose in the middle of the shake, when everything says panic, but you take one breath, one pause, one rep of restraint. That's the win. That's the signal that your training is working. So keep practicing calm. Keep training your response. Let every interruption, every irritation, every emotional wave become a rep. Not to suppress who you are, but to refine it. You're not avoiding emotion. You're mastering it. One deliberate choice at a time. Emotional strength is built through consistent mental training. Calm isn't the absence of feeling, it's mastery over reaction. You fall to your training, not rise to the moment. When pressure hits, what reaction are you rehearsing, and what response could you begin training instead? Choose one situation that triggers you. Next time it happens, pause for 3 seconds before responding. That pause is your rep. Take care and be well.